The rain hammered against the windows of the Manhattan penthouse office, like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. Marcus Chen sat behind his mahogany desk on the 42nd floor of the Chen Financial Tower, his fingers mechanically signing document after document without reading a single word. The gold Mont Blanc pen in his hand was worth more than most people's monthly salary, and the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist could buy a small house in the suburbs. At 45 years old, Marcus had everything that society told him meant success. He owned 3 companies, had properties in 5 countries, and his net worth had just crossed the billion-dollar mark, according to Forbes. But as he stared at the rain streaming down the glass walls of his office, Marcus felt nothing but an aching void where his heart should be. 8 months had passed since his wife, Lisa, had died giving birth to their son Daniel. 8 months since his world had collapsed into darkness. 8 months since he had truly looked at his 6-year-old daughter Sophia, or held his baby boy. The grief was like acid in his chest, eating away at him day by day. So Marcus did the only thing he knew how to do. He buried himself in work. He took business trips that lasted weeks. He signed deals worth millions without feeling any satisfaction. He attended board meetings and charity galas and investment conferences, always moving, always running from the ghost of his dead wife and the 2 children who reminded him so painfully of what he had lost. In his absence, he had hired a woman named Victoria to care for the children. She had been recommended by his business partner as the perfect nanny, someone with impeccable credentials who had worked for several wealthy families. Victoria had moved into their Westchester mansion 2 weeks after Lisa's funeral, bringing with her a warm smile and promises to care for Sophia and Daniel as if they were her own. Marcus had been grateful for Victoria's presence because it meant he didn't have to face the daily reminders of his loss. She sent him weekly updates about the children, always positive, always reassuring. Sophia was doing well in school, she wrote. Daniel was growing strong and healthy. Everything was under control. Marcus wired money for whatever they needed and stayed away, convincing himself that the children were better off without their broken father haunting the halls of their home. But today, something felt different. As Marcus sat in his office listening to the rain, a strange restlessness filled him. He looked at the framed photo on his desk, the only personal item in the sterile space. It showed Lisa holding baby Sophia 6 years ago, both of them laughing at something off camera. Marcus couldn't remember what had been so funny that day, and the not knowing felt like another small death, without understanding why. Marcus suddenly stood up and grabbed his coat. His secretary looked up in surprise as he walked past her desk. "Cancel my afternoon meetings," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "I'm going home." The word felt foreign on his tongue. Home. When had he last thought of the Westchester house as home instead of just another property in his portfolio? The drive from Manhattan to Westchester usually took an hour, but Marcus made it in 45 minutes, his black Tesla moving through traffic like a shadow. He hadn't called ahead to say he was coming. Some instinct told him not to, though he couldn't explain why. As the familiar iron gates of his estate came into view, Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The mansion looked the same from the outside, its white columns and manicured lawns as perfect as always. But something felt wrong. The house was too quiet, too still, like it was holding its breath. Marcus parked in the circular driveway and walked to the front door, his Italian leather shoes clicking on the marble steps. He used his key to enter silently, not wanting to disturb anyone. The foyer was immaculate, with fresh flowers in the crystal vase and not a speck of dust on the antique furniture. But there was no sound of children playing, no laughter, no footsteps. The silence was oppressive, weighing down on Marcus like a physical thing. Then he heard it, a small, broken sob coming from somewhere deeper in the house. Marcus froze, every muscle in his body tensing. He knew that sound. It was Sophia. His daughter was crying. Moving carefully, Marcus followed the sound down the hallway toward the living room. As he got closer, he could hear more clearly. There was Sophia's voice, high and trembling with fear, and the sound of baby Daniel crying. But it was what Sophia said next that made Marcus's blood turn to ice in his veins. "Please don't hurt us anymore," his daughter begged, her voice breaking on every word. "Please, Miss Victoria. We'll be good, we promise. Just please don't hurt my brother, please." Marcus moved faster now, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. He stopped just outside the living room doorway and looked inside. What he saw made him feel like he had been punched in the stomach. Sophia was huddled in the corner of the room, her small body curled protectively around baby Daniel. Her pink dress, which Marcus remembered buying for her birthday, was torn and filthy. Her dark hair was matted and tangled. There were bruises on her thin arms, purple and yellow marks that looked like fingerprints. She was holding Daniel so tightly, as if she was trying to shield him with her own body. The baby's face was red from crying, and Marcus could see even from the doorway that he was too thin. His cheeks hollow where they should have been chubby. Standing over them was Victoria, but she looked nothing like the professional nanny who sent him those cheerful updates. Her face was twisted with anger, her perfectly styled blonde hair somehow making her look more monstrous. She was holding a wooden spoon in one hand, raising it threateningly toward the children. "I told you to. Keep that brat quiet," Victoria hissed, her voice like poison. "If you can't control him, maybe you both need to spend another night locked in the basement. Would you like that? Another night in the dark with the rats?" Sophia sobbed harder, pulling Daniel closer. "No, please, he's just hungry. He's been hungry all day. You didn't give us breakfast, and lunch was only bread. He's a baby. He needs milk, please." Victoria laughed, a cruel sound that made Marcus feel sick. "Milk costs money. Your father sends plenty, but why should I waste it on you two when I have my own needs? Besides, a little hunger builds character." Marcus couldn't stay silent another second. He burst into the room, his voice exploding from his chest in a roar that seemed to shake the walls. "Get away from my children." The sound was primal, like a wounded animal protecting its young. Victoria spun around, her face going white when she saw him. The wooden spoon fell from her hand, clattering on the hardwood floor. Sophia looked up, her eyes wide with shock and something else. Fear. His own daughter was afraid of him too. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he pushed past it, moving to place himself between Victoria and the children. "Daddy," Sophia whispered, as if she couldn't believe he was real. "Is it really you?" Marcus knelt down, his hands shaking as he reached for his children. "Yes, baby, Daddy's here. You're safe now. Both of you are safe." But Sophia didn't move toward him. Instead, she pressed herself further into the corner, still clutching Daniel. The baby's cries had softened to whimpers, but his little fists were clenched in his sister's torn dress. Marcus felt his heart shatter into a million pieces. His children didn't trust him. How could they, when he had abandoned them to this monster? Victoria had recovered from her initial shock and was now trying to put on a show. Her face transformed into a mask of concern, and she stepped forward with her hands clasped. "Mr. Chen, you're home early. I was just disciplining the children." Sophia has been very difficult lately, refusing to follow rules. You know how children can be. They need a firm hand. Marcus stood slowly, turning to face Victoria. The rage inside him was like nothing he had ever felt before, a burning fury that threatened to consume him. But his voice, when he spoke, was deadly calm. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been hurting my children?" Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, and Marcus saw the real woman underneath. The calculating, cruel person who had been torturing his babies while he hid in his office. "I don't know what you mean," she said, trying to sound innocent. "Children make up stories." Sophia has been acting out since her mother died. She's looking for attention. Marcus took a step toward her, and Victoria backed away. There are bruises on my daughter's arms. My son is underweight. They're terrified. How long, Victoria? She lifted her chin, and for a moment, her true nature showed through completely. Your children are spoiled brats who needed to learn their place. I've been doing you a favor, teaching them discipline while you played businessmen. You should be thanking me. The sound that came from Marcus's throat was barely human. He wanted to hurt this woman, wanted to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on his children. But then, he heard Sophia whimper behind him, and he forced himself to stop. His children had seen enough violence. They didn't need to see more from their father. Get out, he said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Get out of my house right now before I call the police. And if you ever come near my children again, I will destroy you. I will use every penny I have, every connection, every resource to make sure you never hurt another child again. Do you understand me? Victoria grabbed her purse from the side table, her movements quick and angry. You'll regret this, she spat. I'll sue you for wrongful termination. I'll tell everyone how you abandoned your children, how you're an unfit father. Marcus pulled out his phone, his fingers already dialing 911. Go ahead. But first, let me call the police and report the child abuse. I'm sure they'll be very interested in talking to you. Victoria's face went pale again, and she practically ran from the room. Marcus heard the front door slam, then the sound of her car starting and driving away. Only then did he turn back to his children. Sophia was still in the corner, still holding Daniel, still looking at him with those frightened eyes. Marcus's legs felt weak, and he sank to his knees a few feet away from them, not wanting to crowd them or scare them more. Sophia, he said, softly, his voice breaking. Baby girl, I'm so sorry. Daddy is so sorry. Tears were running down his face now. 8 months of grief and guilt finally breaking through the dam he had built around his heart. Sophia watched him for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she shifted Daniel in her arms. Are you going? To leave again? She asked, her voice so small it was almost a whisper. Are you going to go away and leave us with someone else? The question destroyed what was left of Marcus's composure. He shook his head frantically, reaching out his hands but not quite touching them, letting Sophia decide if she wanted to come closer. No, baby, never again. Daddy's never leaving you again, I promise. I swear on Mommy's memory, I will never leave you and Daniel alone again. Something in his voice, maybe the raw honesty or the pain, must have reached Sophia. She carefully stood up, still holding Daniel, and took one small step toward him, then another. Then she was close enough that Marcus could see the tears on her cheeks, could smell the little girl's scent of her hair beneath the dirt and fear. She was mean to us, Sophia whispered. She locked us in the basement when Daniel cried too much. She didn't give us food sometimes. She hit me when I tried to get Daniel extra milk. She said if I told anyone, she would hurt Daniel worse. She said you didn't love us anymore since Mommy died, that you gave us to her because you didn't want us. Each word was like a knife in Marcus's heart. He held out his arms, and finally, Sophia came to him. She fell against his chest, still holding Daniel, and Marcus wrapped his arms around both of his children for the first time in 8 months. Daniel was so light, too light for an 8-month-old baby. Sophia was trembling against him, her thin shoulders shaking with sobs. Marcus held them both, rocking slightly, whispering apologies and promises and words of love. Daddy's here, he kept saying. Daddy's here, and you're safe. No one will ever hurt you again. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them huddled together on the living room floor. Marcus could feel Daniel's little fingers gripping his shirt, could feel Sophia's tears soaking through the expensive fabric. He didn't care. Nothing mattered, except his children, except trying to undo the damage his absence had caused. When Sophia's sobs finally quieted 2 hiccups, Marcus carefully stood up, lifting both children with him. Daniel was awake now, his dark eyes studying Marcus's face with the serious expression that only babies could manage. Marcus adjusted his hold, making sure both children were secure in his arms. "Let's get you both cleaned up and fed," he said. "Then Daddy's going to call some people to make sure Miss Victoria never hurts anyone again." Sophia nodded against his shoulder, then pulled back slightly to look at him. "Daddy, can we see Mommy's room?" Miss Victoria locked it and said we weren't allowed in there anymore. Marcus felt another surge of anger, but he pushed it down. "Of course, baby. Mommy's room is your room too, whenever you want it to be." He carried them upstairs, Sophia directing him to get Daniel's formula from the kitchen first. Marcus was shocked to see how little was left, just 1 small can that was nearly empty. He made a mental note to fire his household manager, who was supposed to be overseeing things like this. Or maybe Victoria had been intercepting the money meant for household expenses. He would find out. He would find out everything while Daniel drank his bottle, making small contented sounds that brought tears to Marcus's eyes again. Sophia sat next to them on the couch and began to talk. It was like a dam had burst, and all the words she had been holding back came pouring out. She told him about the first time Victoria had been mean, just a few days after she arrived, how it had gotten worse and worse, how she had tried to protect Daniel, tried to be a good big sister, how she had wanted to call him so many times, but Victoria had taken away the phone, how she had tried to tell her teacher at school, but Victoria had threatened to hurt Daniel if anyone found out. Marcus listened to it all, his heart breaking more with every word. His brave little girl had been fighting alone, trying to protect her baby brother with no one to help her. When the bottle was empty and Daniel was drowsy, Marcus carried both children to the master bedroom, the room he had shared with Lisa. He used his master key to unlock it, and the familiar scent of Lisa's perfume hit him like a physical blow. But he didn't run this time. He couldn't run anymore. He settled the children on the big bed, then ran a bath in the master bathroom. Sophia helped him bathe Daniel, showing him how she had been doing it herself, because Victoria wouldn't help. The baby splashed and gurgled, seeming happy for the first time since Marcus had arrived home. Then it was Sophia's turn. Marcus helped her wash her hair, being careful of the tangles, and saw more bruises on her back and legs. Each one was documented in his mind, evidence of his failure as a father. When both children were clean and dressed in fresh clothes, Marcus ordered food to be delivered from Sophia's favorite restaurant. He watched her eat pasta with the enthusiasm of someone who had been hungry for too long, and fed Daniel properly mixed formula that he had ordered for immediate delivery from the pharmacy. As they ate, Marcus made phone calls, first to the police, to report the child abuse. They said they would send someone immediately to take a statement. Then to his lawyer, who promised to file emergency custody papers and a restraining order against Victoria. Then to a private investigator, to dig into Victoria's past and find out if she had done this before. Then to a child psychologist, to schedule emergency appointments for Sophia. By the time the police arrived, both children were asleep on the master bed, Daniel in his portable crib that Marcus had brought in, and Sophia curled up under Lisa's favorite blanket. Marcus met the officers in the hallway, not wanting to wake the children. He showed them the pictures he had taken of the bruises, told them everything Sophia had told him. They took his statement seriously, especially when he mentioned Victoria's threats and the locked basement. One officer, a woman with kind eyes, who introduced herself as Officer Martinez, asked to speak with Sophia when she woke up. "She's been through enough," Marcus said, his protective instincts flaring. Officer Martinez nodded understandingly. "I know, Mr. Chen. But we need her statement to build a strong case. I specialize in crimes against children. I promise I'll be gentle." Marcus agreed reluctantly, and Officer Martinez waited patiently until Sophia woke up from her nap. The little girl was scared at first, clinging to Marcus's hand, but Officer Martinez was true to her word. She was gentle and patient, letting Sophia tell her story at her own pace. She had brought a special teddy bear that she gave to Sophia, explaining that it was for brave children who helped the police. By the end of the interview, Sophia was even smiling a little, holding the bear tight. After the police left, promising to issue a warrant for Victoria's arrest, Marcus sat with his children in the living room. The house felt different now, like the shadows had been chased away. But he knew they had a long road ahead of them. Trust would have to be rebuilt, trauma would have to be healed, and Marcus would have to learn how to be a father again, how to be present instead of running away. "Daddy," Sophia said, looking up at him with those big dark eyes that were so like her mother's, "are you really going to stay? You're not going to leave us again?" Marcus pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. Daniel was in his bouncy seat nearby, contentedly chewing on a toy. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me, okay?" Sophia nodded solemnly. "I made a terrible mistake," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "When Mommy died, I was so sad that I ran away. I thought it would hurt less if I didn't see you and Daniel, because you remind me of her. But that was wrong. It was selfish and cowardly, and I hurt you both so much. I failed you as a daddy, and I am sorrier than all the words in the world can say." Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing his words with the seriousness that only children could bring to such moments. "Mommy wouldn't have left us," she said finally, and the words stung because they were true. Marcus nodded, swallowing hard. "You're right. Mommy was braver than Daddy. But I'm going to try to be brave now, like she was. Like you've been, taking care of Daniel all by yourself. You've been so brave, Sophia. The bravest girl in the whole world." Sophia leaned against his chest, and he felt her little body relax for the first time since he had found her cowering in the corner. "Does this mean we can be a family again?" she asked, "even without Mommy?" Marcus kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "We're always a family, baby. Always. Mommy is still with us in our hearts, and she would want us to take care of each other. That's what we're going to do from now on. Take care of each other." The next days were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus took indefinite leave from his companies, putting his senior managers in charge. For the first time in his career, work took a back seat to everything else. He hired a new nanny, but only after extensive background checks, and with the understanding that he would be home every evening. Mrs. Chen, a grandmother from Taiwan, who came highly recommended by several families Marcus trusted, was nothing like Victoria. She was warm and patient, teaching Sophia words in Mandarin and singing soft songs to Daniel. But more importantly, Marcus was there. He was there for breakfast, making Sophia's favorite pancakes in shapes of animals. He was there for Daniel's first real laugh, a beautiful sound that made all three of them cry happy tears. He was there for bedtime stories and nightmares, for scraped knees and first words. The investigation into Victoria revealed a pattern of abuse at previous employers, though none had pressed charges. Marcus made sure that changed. He hired the best prosecutors, not for revenge, but to ensure she never had access to children again. Victoria was eventually convicted of child abuse and endangerment, receiving a 5-year prison sentence and lifetime ban from working with children. The trial was hard on Sophia, but Marcus was there for every moment, holding her hand, reminding her how brave she was. Through it all, he learned things about his children that he had missed. He learned that Sophia loved to paint, that she had been creating pictures of their family that Victoria had thrown away. So he turned one room into an art studio, and soon, the walls were covered with Sophia's colorful creations. He learned that Daniel was fascinated by music, his face lighting up whenever Marcus played the piano that had sat unused since Lisa's death. So he started playing again, despite the pain it brought, because his son's joy was worth any amount of hurt. He also learned about grief, real grief, not the numbing escape he had chosen before. He started seeing a therapist, working through his guilt and pain. He joined a support group for widowed parents, finding comfort in shared experiences. He taught Sophia that it was okay to be sad about Mommy, that missing her was part of loving her. They created new rituals to honor Lisa's memory. Every Sunday, they would visit her grave, bringing fresh flowers and telling her about their week. Sophia would leave drawings, and Marcus would help Daniel place his little handprints in the dirt. They would have picnics there sometimes, spreading a blanket near the headstone and sharing stories about Mommy. One evening, about 3 months after that terrible day when Marcus had found his children huddled in fear, Sophia asked him a question that stopped him cold. They were sitting at the dinner table, Daniel in his high chair cheerfully spreading mashed sweet potato across his face, when Sophia looked up from her plate. "Daddy, why did Miss Victoria hate us?" Marcus set down his fork, giving his daughter his full attention. He had learned that Sophia's questions, no matter how hard, deserved honest answers. "She didn't hate you, baby. I think Miss Victoria was a very unhappy person who made very bad choices. Sometimes when people are hurting inside, they hurt others. But that doesn't make it okay, and it wasn't your fault or Daniel's fault. Nothing you did made her be mean to you." Sophia considered this, twirling her spaghetti thoughtfully. "My friend Emma at school said her mommy told her we were lucky you came home when you did." Marcus felt the familiar stab of guilt, but he had learned to sit with it instead of running. "Emma's mommy is right. I should have come home sooner. I should have never left at all. But I'm grateful every single day that I came home when I did." "Me too," Sophia said simply, then brightened. "Can we have ice cream for dessert?" The normalcy of the question, the simple childhood request, made Marcus's eyes water. His daughter was healing. She could think about ice cream and desserts and normal things again. "Of course we can have ice cream," he said, his voice only slightly shaky. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, though the scars remained. Sophia still had nightmares sometimes, waking up crying for Daniel, afraid someone was going to take him away. Marcus would hold her, rock her, remind her that she was safe. Daniel, too young to remember the worst of it, grew into a happy, chubby toddler who followed his big sister everywhere. The house that had once felt like a tomb became a home again. Children's laughter filled the hallways. Toys cluttered the pristine floors. Crayon drawings decorated the refrigerator. Marcus learned to braid Sophia's hair for school, though he was terrible at it at first. He learned all the words to Daniel's favorite songs, singing them over and over until his throat was sore. Work became something he did during school hours, and he found to his surprise that his companies ran just fine without his constant presence. He had built good teams, and stepping back allowed them to shine. His priorities had completely shifted. Deals that once would have consumed him for weeks now barely registered. The only numbers that mattered were the milestone moments. Sophia's first school play, where she played a sunflower and forgot half her lines but smiled so brightly the whole audience couldn't help but smile back. Daniel's first steps, taken during a board meeting that Marcus attended by video, causing him to shout with joy and confuse his entire executive team. One day, almost a year after everything had changed, Marcus was working from home when he heard Sophia talking to someone in the garden. He looked out the window to see her sitting by Lisa's memorial rosebush, the one they had planted together on the anniversary of her death. She was talking to the roses, telling her mother about her day at school, about how Daniel had learned a new word, about how Daddy had tried to make her lunch but had forgotten to take the plastic off the cheese slices. "And Daddy's doing better, Mommy," Sophia was saying. "He doesn't cry as much anymore. He smiles real smiles now, not the fake ones he used to do. He plays with us every day. I think he's going to be okay. We all are." Marcus stepped back from the window, not wanting to intrude on his daughter's private moment with her mother. but her words stayed with him. She was right. They were going to be okay. Not perfect, not without sadness, but okay. The journey from that terrible day when he had heard his daughter sobbing and begging, "Don't hurt us," to now had been the hardest of his life. Harder than building his business empire. Harder than losing Lisa, because he had to face the truth of his own failures, his own cowardice. But his children had forgiven him with the pure, uncomplicated forgiveness that only children could give. They had taught him that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, especially when it was hard. That evening, as Marcus tucked Sophia into bed, she wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "I love you, Daddy. Thank you for coming home." Marcus held her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I love you too, baby. More than all the stars in the sky." It was something Lisa used to say, and Sophia smiled, recognizing the words. "More than all the fish in the sea?" she asked, continuing their old game. "More than all the leaves on all the trees," Marcus replied, kissing her forehead. From the nursery next door came the sound of Daniel calling out Dada in his sleep, and Marcus smiled. His children were safe, they were loved, they were healing. The title that had begun this story, "Little Girl Sob and Begging, Don't Hurt Us," suddenly, her millionaire father visit home and shout, had been the worst moment of Marcus's life, but it had also been the moment everything changed. The moment he stopped running and started being the father his children deserved. The shout that had torn from his throat that day hadn't just been anger at Victoria. It had been his own awakening, his own return to life. And as he stood in the doorway of Sophia's room, watching her drift off to sleep, with a peaceful expression on her face, Marcus made the same promise he made every night. He would be there, he would protect them, he would love them with everything he had, because that's what fathers did. That's what love meant. Not perfection, but presence. Not running from pain, but facing it together. The next morning brought new challenges, as every morning did. Daniel had a fever that turned out to be just teething. Sophia had a spelling test she was worried about. The coffee maker broke, and Marcus had to figure out how to make coffee the old-fashioned way. But these were the problems he welcomed now, the small everyday struggles of a present parent. As he helped Sophia practice her spelling words while bouncing Daniel on his hip, Marcus thought about the man he had been a year ago. That man in his pristine office, signing papers like a machine, had been wealthy but poor in all the ways that mattered. This man, with baby drool on his shirt and marker stains on his hands from helping with homework, was infinitely richer. The investigation had revealed that Victoria had stolen nearly $50,000 meant for household expenses and the children's needs. Marcus didn't care about the money, but he made sure it was donated to a charity that helped abused children. He also started a foundation in Lisa's name, funding programs that provided support for single parents and widowed families. It was his way of making something good come from their pain. Sophia loved helping with the foundation, drawing pictures for the newsletter, and helping pack care packages for families in need. She had developed a deep empathy from her experiences, a compassion that made Marcus both proud and sad. As autumn turned to winter, the family found their rhythm. Morning routines that had once been fraught with tears became smooth and even fun. Marcus learned to do Sophia's hair in increasingly elaborate styles thanks to YouTube tutorials. Daniel learned to walk and then run, chasing his sister through the house with shrieks of laughter. They adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Sunny that Sophia had fallen in love with at the shelter. Sunny seemed to understand that these children needed extra love, and she devoted herself to them completely, sleeping by their beds and following them everywhere. Christmas approached, their second without Lisa, but their first truly together as a family. Marcus let Sophia help plan everything, from the decorations to the menu. She insisted on hanging Lisa's stocking alongside theirs, filling it with drawings and letters to Mommy. On Christmas morning, as wrapping paper flew, and Daniel tried to eat the bows. Marcus felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it no longer consumed everything. Joy had found its way back into their lives. Tentative at first, but growing stronger every day. One evening, as snow began to fall outside, Sophia asked Marcus to tell her the story of how he and Mommy met. It was a story Lisa had told her many times, but this was the first time she had asked Marcus for his version. So he told her about the coffee shop, where he had literally run into Lisa, spilling coffee all over her white dress. How she had laughed instead of getting angry. How he had known in that moment that she was special. How it had taken him 3 weeks to work up the courage to ask her out. Sophia listened with rapt attention, and even Daniel seemed captivated by his father's voice. Mommy was brave, Sophia said when he finished. Like you are now. Marcus hugged his daughter close. We're all brave, he said, even when we don't feel like it. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right, even when you are scared. The legal proceedings against Victoria continued in the background of their lives. She had tried to countersue for wrongful termination, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Other families came forward with their own stories of her cruelty. Marcus made sure they all had legal representation. Justice was important, not for revenge, but for protection. To ensure no other children would suffer, as Sophia and Daniel had suffered. The day Victoria was sentenced to prison, Marcus didn't feel joy, just relief. That chapter was closed. They could move forward without looking over their shoulders. Spring arrived with its promise of renewal. Sophia joined a soccer team, and Marcus never missed a game, cheering embarrassingly loud from the sidelines. Daniel started talking in full sentences, most of them involving demands for cookies or requests to play with Sonny. The house was full of life, and noise and chaos, everything Marcus had once avoided, but now treasured. His business partners occasionally expressed concern about his reduced involvement in the companies, but Marcus just smiled. He was still successful by any measure, but success had been redefined. It wasn't about numbers in bank accounts or deals closed. It was about being there for bedtime stories. It was about knowing your daughter's best friend's name and your son's favorite toy. It was about showing up, day after day, especially on the hard days. One afternoon, while pushing Daniel on the swing at the park, while Sophia played with friends, Marcus was approached by a woman he recognized from the grief support group. She looked exhausted, holding the hand of a small boy about Sophia's age. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but I wanted to thank you. Your story, about coming back to your children, it helped me realize I was doing the same thing, running from my pain and leaving my son behind emotionally. I've started therapy, started being present again." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't realized his story had impacted others. "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," he told her honestly, "but also the most important. Your son is lucky to have you." She smiled, tears in her eyes, and walked away with her boy. Marcus watched them go, then turned back to his own children. Daniel was laughing as the swing went higher, and Sophia was racing around with her friends, her face bright with joy. That night, as they sat around the dinner table, Sophia announced that she had to do a project for school about heroes. "I'm going to write about you, Daddy," she said matter-of-factly, twirling her fork in her spaghetti. Marcus was stunned. "Me? I'm not a hero, sweetheart. Heroes are firefighters and doctors and people who save lives." Sophia looked at him with those wise eyes that sometimes seemed far older than her years. "You saved us, Daddy. You came home when we needed you. You shouted at the bad person and made her go away. You stayed even when you were sad. That makes you a hero to me and Daniel." Marcus had to excuse himself to the bathroom, where he cried quietly for a few minutes. When he returned, Sophia pretended not to notice his red eyes, but she held his hand extra tight. That night, after the children were asleep, Marcus stood in Lisa's old study, which had been turned into a playroom. Toys were scattered everywhere. Drawings covered the walls, and Daniel's blocks spelled out nonsense words on the floor. It was chaos, beautiful chaos. He picked up a photo from the shelf, one taken just weeks ago, at Sophia's soccer game. All three of them were laughing at something, covered in mud from the rain that had started during the game. They looked happy. They looked like a family. "We're doing okay, Lisa," he whispered to the photo and to the memory of his wife. "I know I failed them at first. I know I ran when I should have stayed. But I'm here now. I'll always be here now. And our babies, they're amazing. Sophia is so brave and protective and kind. She has your strength and Lisa's heart. And Daniel, he's growing into such a happy little boy. He has your determination and Lisa's laugh. They're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay." As summer arrived again, marking a full year since that terrible day, the Chen family had truly transformed. The mansion that had once been a prison of fear was now filled with the sounds of family life. Water gun fights in the backyard left everyone soaked and laughing. Camping trips in the living room with blankets and flashlights became weekly adventures. Daniel had developed an obsession with dinosaurs, and Marcus could now identify every type of dinosaur that had ever existed. Much to his business partner's amusement during conference calls, when Daniel would burst in roaring like a T-Rex, Sophia had started writing stories. Incredible tales of brave princesses who saved kingdoms and protected their little brothers from dragons. Marcus had her stories bound into a real book for her 8th birthday, and she had cried happy tears when she saw it. "Now I'm a real author like the people in the library," she had said, clutching the book to her chest. Her teacher had called Marcus in for a conference, not for any problems, but to tell him how much Sophia had blossomed. "She's become a leader in class," the teacher said. "She stands up for kids who are being picked on. She's the first to help when someone is struggling. You should be very proud." Marcus was proud, prouder than any business achievement had ever made him. But he also knew that Sophia's strength had been forged in trauma, and he wished she hadn't had to learn those lessons so young. The therapist assured him that children were resilient, that with love and support, Sophia would continue to heal. The nightmares were less frequent now, coming only occasionally when something triggered a memory. Marcus had learned the triggers too, adjusting their lives to avoid them when possible, and supporting Sophia through them when they couldn't be. Avoided. One particularly meaningful day came when they visited Lisa's grave, on what would have been her 39th birthday. Sophia had made a special card, and Daniel had picked flowers from the garden with Mrs. Chen's help. As they sat on the blanket by the headstone, Sophia asked a question that surprised Marcus. "Do you think Mommy knows we're okay now?" Marcus pulled both children close, feeling the warm sun on their faces. "I think she does, sweetheart, and I think she's proud of all of us for taking care of each other." Daniel, who was now stringing words together in increasingly complex ways, added his own thought. "Mommy watching us from the clouds. She happy, we happy." The simple wisdom of his 3-year-old son made Marcus's eyes water. "That's right, buddy. She's happy, we're happy." They spent the afternoon there, having a picnic and telling stories about Lisa. Sophia remembered more than Marcus had realized. Little details about her mother's laugh, the way she would dance in the kitchen while cooking, how she would make up silly songs for bedtime. Daniel listened with fascination to stories about the mother he would never remember, but would always know through the love of his family. As they were packing up to leave, Sophia placed her hand on the headstone and whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. When he asked her about it later, she simply said, "I told her thank you for sending Daddy back to us." The profound faith of his daughter, her ability to find gratitude even in loss, humbled Marcus completely. That evening, as he helped with homework and cooked dinner with Daniel helping by banging pots enthusiastically, Marcus reflected on the journey they had taken. The man who had once thought money and success were everything had learned what true wealth meant. It was in the sticky kisses from his son, the proud smile of his daughter when she mastered a difficult math problem, the quiet moments reading together before bed. The business world hadn't forgotten Marcus Chen. Articles were written about his transformation, the billionaire who chose family over fortune. Some called him foolish for stepping back from his companies. Others called him inspirational. Marcus didn't care what anyone called him, except for two people, and they called him Daddy. His companies continued to thrive under the leadership teams he had built, and Marcus stayed involved enough to ensure their continued success. But his office hours were strict now. Home by dinner time, no exceptions. Weekends were sacred family time. His phone went into a drawer during bedtime stories. One day, Marcus received a call from Officer Martinez, the kind policewoman who had interviewed Sophia that terrible day. Victoria had been denied parole, partly due to the strong victim impact statement Marcus had submitted. But Officer Martinez was calling about something else. "Mr. Chen, I wanted you to know that your family story has made a difference. We've started a new training program for identifying signs of abuse in wealthy households, where it often goes unnoticed. Your daughter's bravery in speaking up has potentially saved other children." Marcus thanked her, his throat tight with emotion. After hanging up, he found Sophia practicing soccer in the backyard and told her what Officer Martinez had said. Sophia stopped, the ball rolling away forgotten. "So other kids won't have to be scared like we were." Marcus nodded. "That's right, baby. Your bravery helped other children be safe." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maybe that's why it happened to us, so we could help others." The maturity and compassion in her voice made Marcus pull her into a tight hug. "Maybe," he agreed, "but I still wish it had never happened to you." Sophia hugged him back. "Me too. But we're okay now, Daddy. We're better than okay. We're together." As autumn approached again, the family prepared for new milestones. Sophia would be starting 3rd grade, and Daniel would begin preschool. The thought of Daniel going to school terrified Marcus more than any business negotiation ever had. But Daniel was excited, constantly talking about the friends he would make and the toys he would play with. Sophia had taken her role as big sister seriously, teaching Daniel important things, like how to share, how to stand up for himself, and most importantly, how to tell a trusted adult if anyone was ever mean to him. The night before Daniel's first day of preschool, Marcus found Sophia in Daniel's room, reading him a story. She had chosen one of their mother's favorites, one Lisa had read to Sophia when she was Daniel's age. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching his daughter's gentle patience as Daniel asked questions about every picture, seeing Lisa's nurturing spirit living on in their daughter. When the story was finished and Daniel was tucked in, Sophia kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're going to do great tomorrow. And if anyone is mean to you, you tell the teacher right away, okay? And tell me and Daddy when you get home." Daniel nodded solemnly, his little face serious. "I tell, promise." That first day of preschool, Marcus might have been more nervous than Daniel. He waited in the parking lot for the first hour, just in case. But when pickup time came, Daniel bounded out, chattering excitedly about his new friends and the blocks he had played with and the songs they had sung. Sophia, who had convinced Marcus to let her come along for pickup, listened to every word with genuine interest, asking questions and celebrating his achievements. Watching his children together, Marcus saw the bond that trauma had forged, but love had strengthened. They protected each other, supported each other, loved each other with a fierceness that took his breath away. The seasons continued to change, and with them came growth and healing. Sophia joined the school choir, her clear voice rising in songs that sometimes made Marcus cry for their beauty. Daniel developed a love for building things, creating elaborate structures with blocks and Legos that defied gravity and logic. The house was never quiet, never perfectly clean, never magazine-ready, as it had been during those terrible months with Victoria. Instead, it was alive, truly alive, with the beautiful chaos of childhood, Marcus learned to embrace the chaos. He became the father who volunteered for field trips, who knew all the names of Sophia's stuffed animals, who could recite Daniel's favorite books from memory. He learned to braid hair and tie soccer cleats, and make lunches that were both nutritious and fun. He learned that sometimes ice cream for dinner was perfectly acceptable, especially after a hard day. He learned that dancing in the kitchen while cooking dinner was not only allowed but encouraged. He learned that getting dirty at the park was more important than keeping clothes clean. One winter evening, as snow fell softly outside, the family was gathered in the living room. Sophia was working on homework, occasionally asking Marcus for help with multiplication. Daniel was building what he insisted was a rocket ship but looked more like abstract art. Sunny was sprawled by the fireplace, occasionally thumping her tail when someone said her name. It was a perfectly ordinary evening, unremarkable in every way except for how precious it was. Marcus looked around at his family, his heart full to bursting with love and gratitude. This was what he had almost lost. This was what his absence had nearly destroyed. But they had found their way back to each other, stronger for having been broken. Sophia looked up from her homework, catching her father's emotional expression. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. Marcus smiled, reaching out to ruffle her hair. "I'm more than okay, sweetheart. I'm perfect." And he meant it. Not perfect in the way he had once defined it, with spotless offices and closed deals and growing bank accounts. Perfect in the messy, complicated, beautiful way of real life. Perfect in having children who trusted him again, who ran to him with their joys and sorrows. Perfect in being present for every moment, good and bad. As bedtime approached, they went through their nighttime routine, baths and pajamas, teeth brushing with Daniel still needing supervision to actually clean rather than just eat the toothpaste. Then came story time. All four of them piled onto Marcus's bed because that had become their tradition. Marcus read while Sophia helped turn pages, and Daniel provided sound effects for all the animals. When the story was done, and prayers were said, including always a special good night to Mommy in heaven, Marcus carried Daniel to his room and tucked Sophia into her bed. "Daddy," Sophia said as he adjusted her blankets, "I'm glad you came home that day. I'm glad you heard us." Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, his hand gentle on her hair. "Me too, baby. It was the most important day of my life. The day I woke up and remembered what really mattered." Sophia smiled, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "We matter," she said simply. "You and Daniel and me and Mommy's memory. We're what matters." Marcus kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of his daughter. "That's right. You're all that matters. Forever and always." He stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her drift off to sleep, then checked on Daniel, who was already dreaming, his little fists curled around his favorite dinosaur. Finally, Marcus went to his own room, but not to the home office he had once hidden in. Instead, he sat by the window, looking out at the snow-covered yard where his children would build snowmen tomorrow. He pulled out a journal, something his therapist had suggested, and began to write. He wrote about the day's small victories, Daniel using the potty successfully, Sophia getting an A on her spelling test. He wrote about the challenges too, the moment when Daniel had fallen and cried for Mommy, not understanding why she couldn't come, the way Sophia still sometimes checked locks twice before bed, but mostly, he wrote about gratitude, gratitude for second chances, gratitude for children who could forgive, gratitude for the strength to face each day, even the hard ones, gratitude for the memory of Lisa, whose love still guided them, gratitude for the journey from that horrible day when he had heard his little girl sob and beg "Don't hurt us too now," when laughter filled their home. The title of their story, Little Girl Sob and Begging Don't Hurt Us. Suddenly, her millionaire father visit home and shout, had been the beginning of their salvation. That shout of rage and protection had broken through Marcus's numbness, had shattered the walls he had built around his heart. It had been the moment everything changed. As Marcus closed his journal and prepared for bed, he heard small footsteps in the hallway. Daniel appeared in the doorway, dragging his dinosaur, his face worried. "Daddy, I had a scary dream," he said, his little voice trembling. Without hesitation, Marcus lifted his son into his arms, carrying him to the big bed. "It's okay, buddy. Daddy's here. You're safe." Daniel curled against him, his breathing evening out as he felt secure. A few minutes later, more footsteps. Sophia stood in the doorway. "I heard Daniel. Is he okay?" Marcus patted the bed beside him. "Come here, sweetheart." Sophia climbed in on his other side, and soon all three were settled, the children safe, between their father's protective arms. This was not the life Marcus had planned. It was messier, harder, more challenging than anything he had imagined. But it was also richer, deeper, more meaningful than any success he had achieved in business. As his children slept beside him, their breathing synchronized in the darkness, Marcus whispered a promise to them and to Lisa's memory. "I'm here. I'll always be here. No one will ever hurt you again." The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in white, covering the old, and making everything new. Inside, the Chen family slept peacefully, together, safe, loved. They had traveled from darkness to light, from fear to safety, from brokenness to wholeness. And while the scars remained, they had become proof, not of damage, but of healing, not of weakness, but of strength, not of ending, but of beginning again.